There would only be 900 years of hard, intensive training until we would triumph in the World Cup of 1966. And let's be absolutely honest, it could be another 900 years before we triumph again. But it was quite coincidental, as the gentleman quite rightly said. Also the year that William, Duke of Normandy, William the Conqueror, defeated the Saxon King Harold II at the Battle of Hastings. William was crowned King William I of England on Christmas Day of that year, but still had to continue to fight his newly conquered subjects, as they did not take kindly to tourism in those days. Now William, after some 10 years, it was a citadel built to command and defend the city of London. Within its walls we had a royal mint, a royal observatory, a public records office, a royal armoury. We even had a royal zoo and menagerie, where the royal collection of exotic beasts and animals were held. There were lions, tigers, zebras, even polar bears, tied on long ropes and allowed to go fishing in the River Thames. Prisoners of all kinds have been safely held within these walls. Dukes, earls, bishops, heads of state, queens of England, all at one time or another have been held safely here in the Tower. Of course, many, many of them to suffer execution out there on Tower Hill. Or there to the right of that large white prominent building, there stood the public scaffold.
It's not there anymore.
Erected in the year 1465, no less than 75 men of noble birth were to lose their heads there by way of the block and axe. Behold, the head of a traitor! So die all traitors! God save the king! And the crowd would cheer! Thank you very much. Really too little, too late, wasn't it? I mean, I did tell you twice in the crowd, didn't I? Didn't I tell you twice? Why didn't you cheer? How many Americans have I got? Look! We're not going anywhere until we get this bit right. And I have a distinct feeling we could be here some time. I really do. Following firstly, the tower started around the year 1280. As you can see, we'll soon have the scaffolding down. It will be completed. For it is there, on every night of the year, including this very night, that the secret password is issued to all those who may have business in the inner ward after midnight, when the gates of the tower are securely locked and bolted, and no one is allowed in without that secret password. Archway than the one you have just passed. Now this is called the Sally Port, or Royal Entrance, excuse me, or Royal Entrance. Beyond those gates there is a small drawbridge that leads to the Queen's Stairs. The Rockman's Gate safe access to the Tower of London. Indeed, the gates you see there are original and date back well over 700 years. It was indeed at those very gates Lord Chancellor of all England, and one-time close friend of Henry VIII, was held in this lower chamber for 15 months for refusing to accept King Henry as the head of the Church in England. At the same time, and for the same crime, John Fisher, the Bishop of Rochester, was held in the upper chamber. Now both men suffered terror, but refused to abandon their principles. Indeed, the Pope in Rome was so impressed with two such eminent men making a strong stand against the King of England that he declared that Bishop Fisher would be created a cardinal, and that the cardinal's red hat was on its way from Rome. When Henry heard this, is reputed to have said, the cardinal's red hat may well be on its way from Rome, but when it arrives, the bishop will have no head to put. Pretty international, aren't we? I tell you what we'll do. Let's do a quick straw poll now. Let's see. How many people have we got here from North America? Canada, the USA. Put your hands up. Let's have a look. Yeah, the cheap flights are still on, aren't they? James Scott. You've led a sheltered life. James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth, was the eldest of 13 illegitimate children of King Charles II. Now, what do they call him? The Merry Monarch, eh? Now, on the death of his father, this tall, dark, handsome, popular young man, rather like myself, he was a little taller than me, all right? Yeah. Was persuaded to stake a claim to the throne of England by virtue of his uncle, King James II, being a known Roman Catholic, to push home his claim. He landed an army in the West Country. He moved inland, gathering much popular Protestant support. This became known as the Monmouth Rebellion, a rebellion that would be crushed at the Battle of Sedgemoor on the 6th of July, 1685. Now the leader of the rebellion managed to escape. he evaded capture for over a week, till he was found by soldiers, hiding at the bottom of a ditch. He was arrested. He was arrested, brought to London, imprisoned in the Bell Tower. Of course, there was no need for a trial or no. He'd been tried and found guilty in his absence. So 3 days later, he was taken out onto Tower Hill for public execution. That execution would prove to be the bloodiest execution in English history. The executioner on duty that day was a giant of a man, part-time executioner, part-time butcher, and full-time drunkard. He employed five hefty strokes of the axe. The first one merely removing the right shoulder of James Scott. After 5 blows of the axe, still failing to completely sever their head, he did no other than draw out his butcher's knife, kneel down and finish the job off by carving a joint of meat. Now, as I said earlier, James Scott was a handsome, popular young man. Indeed, ladies of the day had turned out to witness his execution. So incensed were at the treatment he received from that executioner that they indeed mobbed and nearly killed the executioner as he left the scaffold site. But stranger still, both body and head of James Scott were returned to the Tower of London. We had discovered a ghastly mistake. Close your mouth, fella. We had discovered a ghastly mistake. We had just executed a son of the king, illegitimate or otherwise, and we had neglected to have his portrait painted for posterity. What do you do with a problem like that, Ed? What do you do in Boston? I know exactly what you'd do in Boston. You'd sue. I've been told. I'll tell you what we did. We sent for the Surgeon Royal. A little late, but we sent for it. Sewed the head back onto the body. A yeoman ordered to dress the body. Perhaps the cravat was a little wider than normal. Reclined him in a chair and sent for an artist. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, in those days an artist could take anything. 1 week, 1 year, 1 month, 2 years to produce a painting. So you'll all be very pleased and relieved to know that this artist completed the task in 12 hours. But then again, the subject never moved very often. Now, many of my colleagues came to have seen this portrait. On orders of Edward I, he was looking for a safer, more convenient entrance to the Tower of London, rather than using the landward entry, where his convoys could be attacked, his stores stolen, and his prisoners released. He decided that by using the River Thames as a highway, breaching a hole in the outer defences of this mighty fortress, at high tide he could bring in small boats and barges and safely unload their cargo. Now, this gate was originally called simply the Watergate, years before you had one in America. And of course, much more to the point, this one was full of water and still had less leaks than yours ever had. Now, if, as I said a moment ago, this was called Watergate, then why now Traitors' Gate? Traitors' Gate is a name that occurred during the time of the Tudors, because of all the alleged traitors that were brought into this mighty fortress by way of this gate. Among them, 3 queens of England. Elton John, George Michael, Ron Queen, Queen Anne Boleyn, Queen Catherine Howard, and Lady Jane Grey, the uncrowned Queen of England for only 9 days. Under the drapery of the bell among whom gunned up a bell. The tower itself had walls 92 feet high. They taper from 15 feet thick at the bottom to 11 feet thick at the top. We have 4 turrets, 1 in each corner. 3 are square, 1 is round. Above each turret. Or at the very least, one of it is due to be X or Y. On this site, Tower Chapel. Before we enter the chapel, I must remind you all that it is still very much a place of worship. All I ask is please treat it.
Okay.
Can I take a picture?
Yes, you may.
Excuse me. Wait, I'm on this one's picture.
Still the Tower of London.